Hello, hello. This is Christine Barn. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello, folks, everyone who's popping in and people who will pop in later. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about, there's Kevin McCarthy is trying very hard to be the speaker, but he is continuously being thwarted by his fellow Republicans. Even Matt Gaetz, voted for Jim Jordan, even though Jim Jordan just endorsed Kevin McCarthy. So I understand opposition. I understand people not being happy with Kevin McCarthy. However, I'm a little concerned that after all this, that we could still, that the win won't matter, and that there will be so much opposition that we could still end up with Democrats in charge. I think hopefully that will not happen, but we shall see. We shall see. But we're going to be talking about that. Also, there's this fascinating thread from a former nutritionist who used to work for Coca-Cola or consulted for Coke. And they talked about some pretty good tea as far as the lobbying efforts of these big companies with organizations like the NAACP and folk professors and etc. to get them to basically make propaganda for them so they could make sure that they could sell their products to poor people on the government dime. So it's really fascinating. I want to highlight it because this happens more times than people, I guess, care to think about. And a lot of things that we'll see be driven in the news or by activists or things that people will tweet about with such ferociousness may just be absolute crap, absolute crap to achieve a political end. So I've got other examples when I go through this, but I do find it fascinating, especially someone else who brought it up as well. Senator from California who's very creepy. And I'll get to why I think it's ironic that he cares at all about it. But before we jump into the news of the day, I'm going to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos. Make sure that you're liking, subscribing, that you're hitting notification bells, following all the good stuff across my different social media platforms. I do have a Rumble. If you guys want me to stream on Rumble, make sure that you're subscribing to the channel. It's at Black Tea News, my handle. Most of my social media is the handle at Black Tea News. If not Black Tea News, it's True Black Tea. And I have another account on TikTok that's a Cup of Black Tea News, but it's either Black Tea News or True Black Tea is my Twitter. And I have a second TikTok account, but every other handle is at Black Tea News. Black like the color, tea like the drink. Make sure that you guys are checking out different merch on blacktnews.com, like Pro-Choice Men Are Sus and Suspect. We got the Constitution is a Glorious Liberty document, the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For, all kinds of goodies you guys can check out on the website so you can get some cool merch to support. Also, if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, cost a stream, run my website, all that good stuff. So if you would like to support with some of that overhead, God bless you. I very much appreciate that. So we can keep it going and also expand as well. So I guess we can just go right into it. You guys know they like to start off with some kind of meme. So Nina Turner, who ran for office, she's a leftist. Is a pretty, I think she has a large audience. I see her in my feed all the time tweeting stuff. I'm not following her though. So she had an interesting post that said all these people were saying people don't want to work are the same ones who are saying who don't want to raise the minimum wage. And she says she thinks it's funny. Now, there's obviously a ton of people who don't want to work today. This is the truth. And there's been people who've been conditioned not to work. I think the pandemic obviously conditioned people not to work. And then they're like, well, there's all this money you can get from not working. That was a condition. And so you have to try to be able to pay people enough money to work. But people were getting so much during the pandemic. A lot of people, especially mom and pop shops, couldn't afford to do that. So it really caused quite a conundrum. But there are a lot of people who have no drive to work and put their best foot forward to some, especially unskilled people want to come into a base level, low entry sort of job, but still have living wage type of pay. So someone had this tweet to comment under her thread from past stuff when she said there was a past tweet of we need $25, minimum wage. But did she pay her people $25 minimum wage? Of course not. She paid them $15 an hour because that was probably what her campaign could afford. So these people don't practice what they preach. They do what they can afford, which is true for most businesses, because if you can't afford it, why would you do it? You're not going to be able to survive. So there was a account that track leftism for you is where that was originally from, but someone must have saved that for a rainy day and certainly posted it in an appropriate thread. So yes, a lot of these folks, again, they don't practice what they preach. And by the way, if it was $15 an hour, what people were pushing for, and now they want $20 and $25. Well, why not $1 million? Like, when does it stop? And you could say that people calculated for prices of where they're currently living, et cetera, blah blah blah. But here's the truth: the real wage is $0, the real minimum wage, because if people cannot afford to hire you, they will not hire you, period. People can only do what they can afford, or they will go out of business. Or God bless some business owners who will do what they can, even sometimes go without so they can provide for their employees. But that's no way to live or take care of a business for a long time, especially if these people have families, etc. It boggles my mind that so many people can love a show like Shark Tank and cheer for all these people, these entrepreneurs, these people starting a business, and then be like, "Oh, these corporations are evil." It's like, bro, what do you, first of all, you probably, if you work at McDonald's or a place like that, or just Family Dollar, you're working for a corporation. You are starting a business. You are starting a corporation. All this stuff are corporations. You're coming against people who are just trying to achieve their American dream, take care of their families and the communities, etc. Because what, you want $25 an hour? I'd recommend getting a skill that you can take a lot of different places, make yourself valuable, and work your way up. But wanting like to McDonald's to pay you $25 an hour, do you know what they will do? Do you know what they have been doing? There's a McDonald's not too far from me. If you go to the drive-through, a machine will take your order. I don't mean inside when you do the kiosk thing, which, by the way, so many restaurants, so many fast food places around me, if you go inside their lobbies, they have kiosks for people to do their own orders. You might come in and it's busy, and the workers will say, "Please take your order on the kiosk." That they'll direct you to just do that. But I'm talking about the drive-through. You go through the drive-through, and a machine will take your order. You will be talking to an automated voice, and they will have that, and your order will be correct. That technology is getting pretty good. So it's going to come a time when you're not going to be able to get a lot of these low skilled jobs because you're making the machine less costly than you. Like, I went to Meyer and man, before Christmas time, they set up like a whole new like checkout area where they put in a ton of lanes where you could self checkout. I mean, they've been had areas where you can self checkout before, but they added so many more new lanes for people to be able to do that. And they only have a few cashiers. I very much prefer cashiers to do it to scan the stuff themselves. It was not my dream to be a cashier. Like I don't like it. I would very much prefer for a human to do it. I'm not fond of it. I will do it if it's really going to be a time saver. But sometimes, I would rather just wait in the line. I don't like to do, especially if I have a lot of stuff. But they're prepping to not have a lot of people on the floor, and some of that is cost. I'm sure a lot of it is cost because a big expense for your business are wages, but it's probably also people don't want to work, and it's been very hard to hire people, so they have to find a way to keep their business going. So people play stupid games, they win stupid prizes. So it's just the truth. Okay, so GOP leadership right now is in flames, and Kevin McCarthy is trying to be the speaker, and there is opposition to him. And here's a little video of Matt Gaetz earlier talking about the whole rundown.
But we were threatened by my committee chairman to be on the Armed Services Committee, Mr. Rogers, that if we did not vote for Mr. McCarthy, we would be removed from committees. Our position is that if Kevin McCarthy is the Speaker of the House and we don't have an ability to ensure that there is oomph behind the agenda and energy behind our oversight, that the committee assignments don't mean that much anyway. I'm not here to participate in some puppet show where we pass a bunch of messaging bills, send them to the Senate, watch them die, fail to use leverage, and don't hold the Biden administration accountable. I don't want to relive the Benghazi experience where it's just theater pretending to be oversight. Right? We can do better than that, and that's our purpose today.
So I've met Matt. I think he's a nice guy. So Kevin McCarthy did not win on the first ballot, and nor did it look like he won the second one either. So I don't know how many times this is gonna take. I guess it'll take as many times as it needs to take, but it's uncomfortably close. Because they have such a slim margin to work with as far as the majority goes. So it needs to be a majority. And some people are suspecting and have been suspecting for a while that if McCarthy can't take within a couple ballots, like Will Chamberlain said, that the Democrats could just pick someone more moderate that maybe people coalesce around. And then a lot of these conservatives or MAGA folks who are putting up a fight against McCarthy definitely won't get what they want. The agenda of the Republicans needs to be to just check Biden and stop his agenda. They're not going to be able to really get legislation that they want done because it is such a slim majority, and Biden's just going to veto a lot of stuff. They're just fundamentally opposed to so many things. So back when Obama was president, Republicans were the party of no. They need to revisit those days of the party of no. So that should be the agenda. That should be the agenda. I don't know how many big victories they're going to be able to keep or do as far as like having the good budgets, et cetera, because they just don't have a lot to work with. And if people want these investigations and other things to look into, but if they let the Democrats kind of snatch this from them, no one's going to win. It looks like a scenario where no one is going to win. I understand people trying to raise up an alternative, but they haven't raised an alternative, a viable option, because there's definitely not enough support for someone else. There's just not quite enough support for Kevin McCarthy. And so Jim Jordan ended up, pledging his support to McCarthy, and then Matt Gaetz immediately nominated Jim Jordan. So the tide is with McCarthy. It looks like it's McCarthy or no one for the Republicans, unless the Democrats are like, can squeeze out their pick, or if the Democrats are like, hey, let's pick a moderate Republican who we can probably work quite a bit with, and we'll vote for them, and maybe there will be enough Republicans who will vote for them, and then we take the win. I don't know how many Republicans will be duped like that, but the Democrats are, I don't know, they're quite stubborn, but they are quite dastardly. So we shall see. But RNC is not happy. Here's a people are talking about Rana for this clip and kind of like, she's having a meltdown. And then some people are saying that she came for Carrie Lake and other folks, and that's really dumb. I don't see that in this clip, but I'll go ahead and play it.
Pelosi and Schumer were always on the same page. And until Republicans start to function like that, can you ever expect to effectively govern?
No, I think we have to start working together. I mean, I look at states like Arizona right now. I mean, look at Arizona. The top vote getter in the whole state was a Republican. She got 1,375,000 votes. And the other Republicans that were running in that state, you know who didn't vote for them? Republicans. So if we're so hateful towards each other that other Republicans won't vote for us, then we're doing exactly what the Democrats want, right? And so this scorched earth, I'm going to take on every other Republican, instead of focusing on who voters want us to focus on, which is the Democrats. Remember, the Democrats who are leaving our border open. They're the ones who kept our kids out of school. They're the ones who have allowed crime to run rampant in our streets. That is the Democrat Party. So as long as we're fighting each other, we are not keeping our eye on the prize. And I think we have to get the speakership settled, and we have to go forward if we're going to be successful in 2024 as a united party. And right now, this exemplifies exactly what the Democrats want to see from our party.
So people are coming at her, and man, I understand that there's the RNC debate for leadership, at least on social media, is pretty hectic, which is very much unlike what normally happens when folks vote in the party leadership. There's people calling folks who's never been called and kind of in the spotlight like this before. Again, if I had to just like gut instinct, I would still think that Rana is gonna pull it out. But as far as like, there's a lot of infighting. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And she mentioned Arizona in particular. And she can call Carrie Lake or whatever, but I don't know much about the inside dynamics of the party, of the inner party sort of fighting. I've just kind of heard about around and like the atmosphere when people discuss the politics. But I do know that there's a lot of infighting in my state, so I can only imagine. I can only imagine. You guys know that I liked Carrie Lake. At least I shared quite a bit of her clips. I thought how she handled the media was quite beautiful. And I very much think that they deserved Carrie Lake. Especially how I'm like, how are you gonna be going against someone who keeps talking about election integrity, and then you have all these problems on election day? I'm like, it would just be poetic justice if she won. But coming against like people who are McCain voters and other stuff like that, I'm not a McCain person, but I do understand that there's still a lot of people in Arizona who that was their senator, who they very much still love. So there's that wasn't wise. I mean, there's so many different factions of people coming against each other, and I can tell you from, at least from my experience from where I'm at, that it is very toxic. I mean, Democrats are bad, but Republicans can be their own worst enemy. And Republicans do not they just don't come together and coalesce around their groups when they're still divided as much as like Democrats will. And I think Democrats, there's a lot of people who don't like the kind of nutties who are like running the party and driving them ideologically, but they do still coalesce around each other in a way that Republicans, I think we're more divided, and we still unify less than they do. You know, Democrats don't lose. They may lose, but they just, I use this analogy. My dad talked about Michigan, which, you know, too bad they lost. I mean, I'm not a big sports person, but my dad did go to U of M. But he'd say, like, Michigan doesn't lose, they just run out of time. So Democrats, I believe they feel that way. Like, we didn't really lose. We just have to, we're going to figure out how we really actually won. And I don't mean just by like election denial kind of stuff, which they totally were into. People like to pretend like an election denial just started in 2020. Like, literally, CNN did an article about election deniers and didn't put Stacey Abrams in there. They're only focusing on 2020 election denial, and it was very broad, very, very broad sort of definition that ended up including a lot of people. It was I wrote an article about it on blacktnews.com if you missed that. So I don't just mean election denial. I mean, they will find a way to somehow game the system to make it seem like they had the victory or continue moving on toward the victory. Like when Trump won, they did the Russia collusion stuff. They pushed that to continuously undermine Trump. So it was like the former administration combined with the vice president undermined the incoming administration so they could reinstall themselves. It's pretty messed up. And they would hit all these experts who would go on TV and keep pushing the lie, knowing that it was garbage, knowing that it was, and a lot of people just knew that Hillary Clinton and her team were the people who started it. And it was a lie that just kept going and going and going for years to really delegitimize a president who was duly elected by the people. So Democrats, they just play a different game. And I think the last gutsy thing Republicans really did and unified around strategy wise was probably when they denied Garland the seat. That was probably the last really gutsy thing that Republicans probably did as far as strategy that really worked to their advantage. But I've expressed my frustration with the leadership and where they're going. Oh my gosh. I'm looking at a feed that just came in 4 minutes ago. Guy Benson is reporting, looks like McCarthy is going to fall short on a third ballot again. He said, if he doesn't get meaningfully closer, how long does he stick this out? When might he bow out and allow, say, a vote on Scalise? And if it gets to a Scalise vote, could he win with this crowd? Some people are saying Scalise. I've heard some arguments on why Scalise wouldn't be any better. But man, we will see. We will see. I'm a pessimist sometimes with these situations, and this just doesn't look good right now. It's fine if people have an alternative choice, but you got to have a good plan. And this just looks like spite. And by the way, I posted something on my Facebook page, and some people were like, basically, the rhinos need to learn a lesson. And at whose expense, by the way? And what makes you think they'll learn the lesson? What makes you think they'll learn the lesson at all? Maybe they just stomp out the folks that you like more the next time, as opposed to being like, oh, we got to play ball more. Like you think people who are so into power are so quick to just give it away? Sometimes Republicans, especially like these establishment Republicans, they're more willing to crush you than they are Democratic opposition. So I don't know if there's a lesson that you can teach them right now with the Democrats. Maybe like that's what I threw out there. The Democrats somehow take leadership, and people are saying, well, that'll teach them a valuable lesson. Like, what lessons do you think Jeffries is going to teach us if he's a speaker? How is that going to be good moving forward to still basically give Biden like the ultimate power? And we have a divided government now with the Democrats in the Senate and Biden in the presidency, and this very, very slim majority in the House. And you want to take that away? that just seems like suicide as far as what you'd fight for. And by the way, I also think it's a little funny because yesterday, and I guess today as well, there's a continuous debate about Trump's comments from the other day. And I talked about it at length if you didn't see it. When Trump said it wasn't my fault that Republicans didn't live up to expectations in the midterms, I was 233 to 20, that is so questionable. That's not questionable. It's just like deceptive. It was the abortion issue poorly handled by many Republicans, especially those that firmly insisted on the no exceptions, even in the case of rape, incest, or life of the mother. That lost large numbers of voters. Also, the people that pushed so hard for decades against abortion got their wish from the U.S. Supreme Court and just plain disappeared, not to be seen from again. Plus, Mitch stupid money. So I had tweeted I posted this on Facebook, and all I had said initially was this is getting some mixed reactions. And then, of course, I did my show and had a lot to talk about. However. There are some people who are like, a lot of people are like, well, he's right. Well, he's definitely not right about this record, or the record's not meaningful because a lot of these numbers that he's counting are incumbents who did not need his endorsement to win. He's just really inflating his numbers. There are people who did win that he did endorse after he switched his endorsement. So I understand why people play these games to make it look like they have more pull than what they have, because that illusion of the pull equals a lot of power. But I think most people aware that this number, it doesn't make any sense now. I haven't seen anyone repeat it in a while. I've seen people say it at first, but it doesn't quite pass the sniff test. So I don't know how many people are still using that record of his endorsements like it was meaningful in any sort of significant kind of way. But I've seen the debate continue about the abortion issue, which I conceded played a role. I don't think it varied for where it played a role, but it definitely played a role in my state. And so people are arguing about how far you push the no exceptions, which most people, we're going to say people believe in exceptions for life of the mother. There's not really people who don't believe in exceptions for life of the mother. But as far as like, there's people who are saying, well, we need to have it 15 weeks, or people can't be so extreme to have the no exceptions for rape and incest. And a lot of people were really arguing that to win. And I'm just like, okay, there's a lot of people, especially people who are defending Trump, wanted to defend this point that he made, and saying that, people can't go so hard on those particular values. And now today I'm seeing people say, well, the rhinos just have to learn we can lose the House. I'm like, do you want to win or do you not want to win? Like, and by the way, when you're a politician, like, you have to compromise on some things to get some things done, right? People saying, like, these pro-lifers who are, you could say they're activists, or I would say we're fighting for human rights. Those aren't the people who you would ask to compromise. Like, there are strategies you have to take to achieve a political end. And I agree, you put up people who will win during election time, and you move forward with policies that you think they can inch you closer to where you want to be. And sometimes you have to go slow. Sometimes you can do things that are radical. But as far as the people fighting to achieve an ultimate end, you have to let them at least try to achieve their end and try to persuade people. It's like saying, like, oh, it's like people are pushing that you have to abandon your principles right now to ever win again. I'm like, no, we need our principles, and we need to fight for them and try to convert people to that way of thinking. And if it's election time, and it's like, you have to deal with where people are at. So it seems like people are taking a lot of the wrong lessons for this. But I will also say that I am seeing people who acknowledge what I've been talking about, as far as the exceptions don't make sense as far as rape and incest. If you believe that life of the mother, that the baby is a baby, and your argument is that you shouldn't kill the baby because it's a baby. Because you have the exceptions, you're saying some babies don't deserve to be protected from violence. And so there was someone I follow who made the point, and she's actually for 15 weeks. But she's like, no, they're right though, that if you say that there has to be an exception for rape and incest, that makes it seem like you are your argument isn't about the baby, but rather about women and their sexual behavior. Because if they're having sex and they make the baby, then they have to have the baby, of course. But if they didn't consensually have the sex to make the baby, then they're able to have the abortion. So it's that makes the argument centered around promiscuity rather than the life of the baby. So I'm just throwing it out there that more people are. We talked about this at length yesterday. If you missed, you can go back and watch it. But people on the left and the right, they are making this distinction. And if that's like the exception that you hide behind because it makes you comfortable, just letting you know, you're going to have to flesh out your philosophy a little bit more. But I have been thinking about this quite a bit since yesterday when I did my show, and just dwelling on this thought process from Trump, and especially as I've seen some Republicans gung-ho on just defending his point. And again, I do acknowledge that abortion is played a role, especially in my state, not everywhere equally, but my state, yeah, definitely. I live in Michigan. Here's the thing, though. I believe I said this yesterday. Trump is not a political commentator. I don't think he said this because he thought it was particularly interesting, or maybe signaling that I don't know, major policy changes that the pro-life movement needs to really make. I think his goal in saying this was to just point the finger somewhere else and say it wasn't my fault. As a matter of fact, that's how the statement starts off. So there's been a lot of talk about Ronna McDaniel, McCarthy, and Mitch McConnell, and everyone is pointing the fingers at everybody. And there's a saying that success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. Well, failure is not an orphan. It is a bastard. Failure is a bastard. It has fathers. There are parents abound. However, they just don't want to claim the child. They don't want to claim the child. It's not that they don't have fathers. It's not that there's not people who are associated with the failure. They just don't want to claim them. And I'm afraid that there was a lot of different hands that played into this particular failure. And there's a lot of people pointing fingers. And I wish there was more accountability from all sides. I really do. If we're going to talk about an ideology that played a significant role in the election, you can't tell me that Trump himself didn't play a role. You can't tell me that he didn't. As far as like trying to scoot back from like people that he picked, in some cases handpicked, I don't know how you cannot have some kind of accountability associated with that. And you can say, well, he picked them, and the RNC and the Senate and all these folks should have like helped them through. You can make that claim. You can make that claim. However, I don't feel that it is still appropriate. What Ronna McDaniel said about Republicans not voting for Republicans, don't you think that's true in Georgia's case? Kemp handedly won that against Stacey Abrams. And if Herschel Walker was a better candidate, Herschel Walker would have defeated Warnock, and there would have needed to be a runoff if he was a better candidate. But when people were canvassing the area, there were Republicans who said, I don't like him because he's a deadbeat dad. And then there was also the stories about him paying for abortions, at least 2, which he denied, which I don't think was wise. Again, I guess it's always possible that someone two people went to an elaborate scheme to frame him. But it certainly looked true. And his son certainly thought it was true. I think his son probably did him a lot of damage, but people knew from jump that he wasn't a good candidate. He had too much baggage, but he was Trump's pick. I don't know how you can get away from that, from that, taking accountability for that. Some people think that if McCormick or would have been the nominee in Pennsylvania, that they still would have lost, and Fetterman still would have won. I don't know. But Oz was his pick, and not only was Oz his pick, I wrote about on Black Teen News, and I talked about it live as it was happening. I did not like the steps that were taken against Kathy Barnett. I didn't like how Trump didn't go as hard as he has gone hard on people. So it probably seemed like he was trying not to totally punch down to her. But he had some allies that were doing some pretty shady stuff, including making some videos and promoting videos that were very, very deceptively edited, and poorly deceptively edited at that, just so terribly cut. And I make, you guys know that I make videos and political videos for folks, and I thought it was sloppy and just totally unethical when I saw it. And they were him, and you had Rick Grinnell, and you had Sean Hannity, and folks who were just going in on Kathy Barnett to try to stop her star that was rising. Now, I don't necessarily think that she probably would have won either, because I don't know how she could have raised enough money to get there, and I have a suspicion that people probably wouldn't have helped her financially get to where she needed to be. But I think winning matters, and how you win should also matter as well. And it was unnecessary fire, I think, from Trump and his allies that made him not come off great. Just to be frank, I was disappointed. And if you follow me long enough, you know I'm never Trump. I've supported Trump. I've defended Trump. I've sung at his rallies. I've been to the Narco ball. I was there. So I'm just trying to be honest, and I might I don't know, get some arrows thrown at me, but I'm just trying to be as honest as possible right now with you all. In Michigan, and I'm sure this is true all over the country, but particularly in Michigan, if you do not go along with the 2020 election was stolen and we need to do everything to have a forensic audit, there's no election going forward, then you are seen as a traitor. People call you a rhino, etc. I've seen people in Macomb County go and protest the clerk who had an audit, but it wasn't the right kind of audit that they wanted. And he did what he could and had forensic experts, even forensic experts that Trump really likes, there to observe the audit that they did. And everybody was praising Anthony Ferlini, who I've had on my show before. And when I went to go interview him and meet some of the experts and stuff, I'm like, why are there people out here protesting? They were people protesting a fundraiser he had. So it was just kind of never enough. And you can be pro-life, and you can believe in the Second Amendment and all the good stuff. But if you're not gung-ho on 2020 election stuff, then people want to totally ride you off and say you're not a real Republican. And that it's just toxic. I'm just going to be honest with you. And I mentioned this yesterday, but Trump talking about the no exceptions in Michigan. Now, Tudor Dixon, she believes in the exceptions for life of the mother. If you had watched the ads, you would not know that, because the ads were brutal. But he did endorse Tudor Dixon, like the Michigan top of the ticket. It was his ticket, especially the Secretary of State, who's a good friend of mine, and the Attorney General candidate. And no one else was basically getting through those convention races. And you don't understand all the stuff behind the scenes that was done to get the result that Trump wanted. So someone said, I was going back and forth with someone today, and they're like, the GOP tells Trump who to pick, and then Trump picks them, who he thinks he can win. I'm like, that's how it worked when he was president. That is not how it works now. It's not how it works now. Maybe there are some people who still go to him like, this person can win, and he doesn't have that much of a vested interest. But a lot of people he picks are people who go along with the 2020 stuff. And he even if people draw back and they lost on election night, he'd be like, well, that's what you get for turning on me. And that rubbed people the wrong way. So you can't just push off that blame. I'm not trying to say it's his fault, like totally or something. Like the RNC stuff, or just stuff on the ground, people, and not just the RNC, like state parties have a big role to play when people win and lose elections. They're all vehicles to win elections. So you have to look, what did your local state party do? Like the county, what did your county party do? Did they all do what they needed to do? There's so many people who signed to be precinct delegates. How many people actually go to the election poll places to patrol the precincts? To just pass out flyers to say this is what our candidates believe, or to poll challenge, or make sure that people aren't telling folks, which I heard at one account on a in Michigan, that someone was telling you have to vote straight party. No, you don't. You don't have to vote straight party. But there's all kind of crazy stuff that might happen at a polling place. But there's a lot of people who want to come to convention and that like the atmosphere or whatever. But are you actually like taking your role as a precinct delegate, or captain or whoever seriously? So there's a lot of people who talk, but talk is cheap when elections are, when it's election time. So are you doing your part? Is your local county party doing their part? Are you electing good people who are good stewards of the money, who are competent in raising it? Raising funds are very important. Is what about the state party? Are they helping candidates? Are they helping to I don't know how all state parties are working, but usually state parties aren't supposed to get involved in primaries. They're not supposed to. I'm not going to say that doesn't always happen, but they will recruit candidates, especially in races where it might be someone might not be running, but they try, at least in when I worked at State Party, they were trying to get a Republican in every sort of position. So they were recruiting people or trying to find people. They ask, hey, do you know someone who could run here, et cetera? So are they recruiting candidates to run, good candidates to run? And then the people have to decide at the end of the day who's going to make it through that primary. You try to get them to win. You do what you can to try to get them to win. And you have to raise enough money to try to win as many races as you can that's feasible to win. Sometimes you can't invest money here if you're going to get this candidate who has a better shot. And so the more money you raise, the more that you can do. So there's just a lot that goes into it. But like the mail-in stuff, the ballot harvesting, Republicans not having good messaging, all that matters. Like Kevin McCarthy talking about, oh, vote for us and we'll fire 87,000 IRS agents. That didn't seem to be the message that was going to resonate with people. That wasn't, especially when so many people probably think that they're not going to be audited. You could have went in more about the Democrats looking at their Venmo accounts and stuff. Break it down on a very personal level. They could have had ads like on Bounce TV or something like that, being like, hey, that hustle you have, the Democrats are watching. Something very personal that can speak to people, that gets them thinking about their money, how it all affects them on a very personal level, them and their families and their hood in their street, in their neighborhood. We don't have enough people really thinking outside of the box, thinking about people on these individual levels. You just have leadership like we're going to fire these 87 IRS agents. That's the only message that I'm aware of that they were really pushing from the leadership. So there's huge failure in a lot of different places. And there's plenty of blame to go around. Plenty of blame to go around. But I want to see some accountability. And you know what? Some of the stuff that people are complaining about the RNC, especially like the money spending, like on events and other stuff like that. Some of the criticism I see isn't lobbied in the right place. So I'm concerned, even if they did replace Rana, that they wouldn't exactly know what to do. Because I see some of the complaints are they'll complain about how much was spent in an event or gifts for donors, which, by the way, I've never worked at the RNC, but I have worked at GOP. My sister actually worked at the RNC under Rana, and I worked under Rana when she was chair in Michigan. But when you have events, you'll have different tiers of sponsorships, and they'll get different perks. But if like there was one event my sister went to when she was in Michigan, not at the RNC, but my GOP, that that they rented out a big space, they had all these donors, they had good food and all this other stuff. They probably spent a lot of money to do it, but the money that they raised was way more than it was well worth what they spent on it. So you just have to think about where these expenses were. I'm not trying to make the case that everything that's on the ledger was wise to do, but some of the complaints that I see, I just are just silly, especially when I see some commentators complaining about it, when I know, like, when they get invited to stuff, their speaker fees are high, which I don't knock them if you can charge high for your speaker fees. But when groups pay, you understand why there's high cost for stuff when you yourself are a high cost, is what I'm saying. So really the ground game, our ground game is not good right now. Our ground game is not good. Our ground game isn't good. The Democrats have had a long plan. And sometimes it's not even your state party who screwed up this time, or maybe it is they screwed up, but there's a generational thing of like consistent screw ups. Like in Michigan, Democrats have had a long plan to get to where they are. It's been a multi-cycle plan to get to where they are. I was at the Michigan Republican Party 2015 to 2017, and I heard about like their plan. I don't remember the name of it. They had like the whole thing that they were telling donors and stuff, like, this is the Democrats' plan. They want to win. They want to redistrict. They want to do this and then they want to take the governorship, the House, and the Senate, etc. And they had a long plan, and we were aware of it, and we weren't able to stop it. And I could get into, time is long, so I'm not getting into a lot of the things that went wrong, but there is a trail. So Republicans, they have to think better as far as like long term, and it feels like we're playing catch up with the ballot harvesting, or catch up with the mail, or where we're going to, but you know what? The Democrats are still going to have an advantage with the mail, because the thing is that they've captured a low effort voter who may not be very, if you're a low effort voter, you're probably low informed as well. And when they control so much of the media market, they feel very confident in how that person is going to vote. So Republicans have to break through the barrier if they want to win. And I think people should go to the polls. I think people should vote on election day, but there's also a matter of what you're going to be able to get done. So I don't know what's going to happen with McCarthy. This isn't good. So maybe he's not going to win. Maybe he's not. He is going to win. I just hope at the end of the day that it's going to be a Republican that's going to stand up to Biden, and not some kind of unified Democrat ploy going forward. And they could easily try it. We shall see. I hope at the end of the day, whatever happens with this vote is going to benefit Republicans, and it's not going to be settled by the time I get off the air. So I guess we'll talk about the result tomorrow. But let's say McCarthy keeps his position. Let's say Rana, which I'm telling you, it is. I wouldn't bet against her. remains RNC chair, and that the current leadership as it is still stands. There people need to take a long look in the mirror about what did not work and be honest. People need to be brutally honest, and people need to talk to people more outside of their circle to find out what went wrong. There was I already mentioned the thing about Herschel Walker and Republicans not responding well to him because they considered him a deadbeat dad. You need to talk to people on the ground who actually talk to people on the ground, because they have a different perspective than you do, and they can let you know. Like if you had some kind of polling, like my sister made this point, if you had some kind of pollsters, you might not think to ask a question like that would get you that sort of answer that's going to resonate. But if you talk to someone who actually talked face to face with the voters, that's something I think that's brutally important for people to know. You can't say we're the party of family values and then here's your candidate who is a deadbeat dad. And Herschel Walker seems very nice, at least, on TV. I've never met the man, so it brings me no pleasure to keep continuously saying that. But that is the reality that his son feels, and that is the reality that the voters felt. Again, if he was a better candidate, he would have won. People are going to have to let go of these harsh ideologies, these purity tests, especially ones that aren't actually about Republican values. They're about vendettas. They're not even about Republican values or conservative values. They're so much about vendettas. People need to let that go and actually win. Work to win. So people mad that Ronna said that there's a lot of infighting with Republicans, and it's just the truth. It's just the truth. So as chair, she's currently chair, and she'll probably continue being chair. That's something that she's going to have to work on. But that is a really big job for people, for an RNC chair to do. There's only so much that she can do. People have to really work to build those bridges locally, at your local level. And I don't have enough time to talk about how much division I have seen in my state on a very local level. So I imagine it can be bad all over the place. I imagine it's probably bad in Arizona and all kinds of different spots. But Michigan, we got shellacked, and we have one of the best state parties just in general in the country. We have a lot of big donors in the state. A lot of people, at least when I was at state party, would come from all over the country to be hired in the state party because they knew that it was a good route to go work in bigger politics in DC. So we've had some epic failures as of late, and there just needs to be leadership and accountability from all over. And we can't have that if there's not some honesty about where a lot of these failures took place. And again, I'll say this again before I move on. Success has many fathers, but failure they say he's an orphan. He's not an orphan. He is a bastard. And people don't want to claim him. But there's a lot of people who have fathered this failure, and we can have success again, but it's going to take some accountability. And I don't appreciate, and I understand people don't want to take the blame. People want to continuously look good, but sometimes leadership is saying, I messed up here and we need to move forward in a positive sort of way. And I don't feel that a lot of people are at least feeling that vibe from folks. So they need to find a way to not just have accountability, but inspire optimism. And I'm just not feeling it, to be frank. Let's move on. I didn't mean to talk about that for that long. But I guess I won't talk about this so terribly too long. But there was a thread by Callie Means, who's about to make a book with Penguin about medicine care. But he used to work for Coke, not like drug Coke, but Coca-Cola, right? And so he said, early in my career, I consulted for Coke to ensure sugar taxes failed and soda was included in food stamp funding. And he says Coke policies are evil because he saw inside the room. And then he said the first step in the playbook was paying the NAACP and other civil rights groups to call their opponents racist. So he goes into detail about how they would give money to these organizations, the NAACP and the Hispanic Federation, and through the American Beverage Association. And they would push that to get rid of any like food stamp benefits that would pay for soda. Was evil, was racist, because this was a good way to get the calories for people who were poor and etc. Which obviously there's other better ways for your kids to eat food, eat better food and stuff. But Big Coke, Big Beverage, went to these organizations. So I think it's very interesting to point out, which he has some receipts, and it talks about even how they had different. He said, I watched the FDA funneled money to professors at leading universities as well as think tanks on the left and right to create studies showing soda taxes hurt the poor. And they also paid for studies that say drinking soda didn't cause obesity. There's a lot of things that cause my obesity. I'm going to say that Coca-Cola was one of them. Like when I was a kid. Would you know what? My parents did not let us drink pop all the time. They said we couldn't because we were some bigums. We came off the womb as some bigums. No, not everyone. I'm the biggest girl for sure in my house. Everyone's smaller than me. But on weekdays we weren't allowed to have pop, but on the weekends we could have pop. And we had pop. Like, it was for sure. Not bought with food stamps or anything, but we did like a good Coke. And other brands. But by the way, if you've ever been to the Coke factory, it's really cool. You should go if you're in the area in Atlanta. So what I really find interesting about this peek behind the veil and him letting you know that they can pay these organizations to kind of fudge the numbers or to get propaganda is because I know this is happening all the time, and people are so quick to say, if you don't support this, then you're racist. If you don't support that, you're racist. You want poor kids to starve. You want poor kids to die. When the truth is that some people just have an agenda and they want the agenda to get passed. Having food for your school lunch program. I read an article, I think it was in the New York Times some time ago, about how that wasn't started because kids, they just loved the kids so much and they wanted to be fed. It was to do like subsidies for for food. And so as they, have different negotiate what goes in there, you'll have people like, oh, we need to put some salmon in there because they want to throw money toward big salmon in Alaska or something. People are lobbying and they're using the kids and they're like, we need to care about the children. When the truth is that, people in government don't normally do a lot of things out of the kindness of their heart. They really don't. But I also find it fascinating because I watched the Clarence Thomas documentary that's on the Daily Wire. I think it's called Created Equal. It's really good if you haven't seen it. If you're still paying for your Daily Wire subscription from the time you watch What is a Woman, which is what I'm doing. That's when I subscribe to watch the documentary with Matt Walsh. So I watched Created Equal about Clarence Thomas, and I thought it was a really good documentary. But it was really interesting when he was up for the Supreme Court nomination. The NAACP at first agreed that they weren't going to get involved, right? They weren't getting involved. He's a black guy, they're a black group, they're not going to come after him. That was like the first like agreement. And then he got word that they were going to have to come after him. And the reason why they were going to have to come after him was because some of the other groups, like the women's groups who didn't want him to be like a threat to abortion. Haha, he gotcha in the end, didn't he? They wanted clear cover to come after him. And they couldn't just attack this black guy, right? They needed some cover first. So they needed the NAACP to attack him. And after the NAACP threw him under the bus, then the white women could come and all free reign and come for Clarence Thomas. So I think it's really interesting how they use these groups that are supposed to be in the interest of, civil rights and minorities, when the truth is they're just a machine, a power-hungry machine out to achieve their own ends. Tammy Bruce is a former feminist. She used to be over a pretty big group. She's a, she's a leftist feminist lesbian who, at least in the past, and now she's a conservative commentator on Fox. Still a lesbian, conservative commentator. I'm not saying you can't be a lesbian and conservative. I just point that out that didn't change. But she decided to switch because she actually wanted to get things done and to make change. And she's just realized that these groups just always want another problem, not to solve, but another problem so they could exist. So that didn't end up jiving with her. Now, if only more people could feel the way that she felt, but a lot of people don't. They want to keep having the problem so they can continue feeding into their money machine, continue getting power. I mean, there's like diversity, higher sort of equity groups, not just on the left, but also on the right. And you know what? I'm sure a lot they make these silly little positions and they put a bunch of money in them. And so I'm sure there's people on the right and the left who'd want positions like that and just are going to continue feeding into the machine rather than, trying to just do the business of Americans because it's in the interest of the individual and the individual being able to take care of their family, et cetera, and build a good community. But that's just not how our government works. That's not how lobbying works. And I just wanted to give you guys a peek into the veil. His name is Callie Means again. It's a fascinating thread. One other thing I want to point out, when I first saw this thread, Michael Knowles had shared it, but that's not the first time I saw it. The first time I saw it was Scott Wiener read it. And Scott Wiener, if you don't know, Scott Wiener is just the most evil debauchery sort of legislation that comes out of California. Scott Wiener probably has his name not only signed on to it, but probably pushed it through. And so he mentioned, he retweeted this thread and said, when I led, I guess, San Francisco's first soda tax campaign of 2014, we lost that time, but 2 years later, I saw firsthand what this describes. These drinks with 10 teaspoons of sugar in one can are toxic. They spike diabetes and obesity, including in kids. It's good when the truth comes out. And so Gays Against Groomers was like, hold up, are you actually pretending to care about children after just creating a bill that legalizes castrating and mutilating them? So yeah, I got questions. So he's not wrong that stuff that, popping isn't good for kids. It's not good for anyone really, but live and let live, I suppose. With some of the stuff, obviously, people like the stuff. And it's not, they always talk about taxes so they can amass more money. But they wouldn't say something about a ban, which of course I wouldn't, just support taking off Coke off the market, especially as these people try to legalize drugs and all kinds of different stuff. But they will take the revenue from the soda. So I doubt his sincerity with that anyway, but he has been pushing the transgender surgery, hormones, all that stuff as well. He was also behind that bill in California where it's like lessening the automatic sentencing for pedophilia, if you're in a relationship and it's with a minor. Um, so he's just got his hands on a lot of weird stuff. And he also, which is really interesting though, is when monkeypox is breaking out, he's a gay man himself, goes to pride festivals and weird outfits, kink kind of outfits. And he was upset that people were saying, hey, stop, gay men, just stop like having sex with multiple partners while there's this outbreak. And he's basically like, how dare you tell people to stop that? And we know telling gay men to stop having multiple partners isn't going to work. So just get the vaccine. I'm just like, well, you don't want us to tell them to stop at all? Like, you don't want us to tell them to exercise some personal responsibility for the benefit of health at all? Like, it's wrong to just throw that out there. Like, I'm not suggesting that the government goes and makes people stop doing this, but to at least say, hey, it's good for you to stop. It's your choice to stop, and you can stop. And be like, people are not gonna stop. Just give us the vaccine. It was so weird. But at the same time, he was pro like masking and mandates, all that stuff. Like the government forcing you to do that stuff for the pandemic. But when it came to like monkeypox, it was like, you gotta let the gay men have sex, man. I'm like, it's so weird. I wrote an article on blacktnews.com about it. He's such a weird, gross human. So I just thought that was interesting. I wanted to share because again, weird, gross human. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. And hopefully we can, I don't know, we'll begin to see the flickers of light of optimism seep through and come to a new hope, I guess, for 2024 and moving forward, because we do need to have some victories, obviously. If we believe the country is going to go in a better direction. So hopefully we'll look for better candidates and encourage people to run and help people who will run. We will do that with our money. We will do that with our time. We will do that by talking to our neighbors and door knocking and making phone calls and just being brave enough to strike up conversations and not just be keyboard warriors when everything goes south. There's accountability all abound. It is not, elections are not just won on the day. I don't believe that elections are won in a few months or should be won in a few months. Elections, if you're really serious about elections, you got to work your way up to getting your name ID up and raising funds. And in the case of Michigan, we are a blue state. Like people are like, oh my gosh, like so surprised about the loss, but we are a blue state, and if there's high turnout, Republicans are having a bad day. And I think that's been something that's known for a while, at least to the people within politics. The reason why we haven't had a House and a Senate that have been blue in a very long time is just because how it was kind of the lines are structured. But they had a plan for that. To knock that down. So, because there's so much land up in the, not enough people, but a ton of land from like here up, basically, and then the UP. So just how stuff was structured, you weren't going to get those sort of numbers. But how they redistrict stuff, a lot of people took like Detroit and Wayne, like areas in Wayne County where there's so many Democrats, and they just kind of clawed them everywhere. So they made a more competitive map for the Democrats for them to be able to win. And with Prop 3 on the ballot, and this honestly being on the ballot, I will say, and abortion being such a passionate issue, which it was a passionate issue, not just because Roe v. Wade went down, but because we had a very strict ban on the books. And it was such a cultural shock to so many people. And there's a viral video of a young woman who said, my parents are Republicans legislators, and I don't know which one it was, but she said, I want to fight with Gretchen Whitmer. And I tried to like debate her or whatever, or at least talk to her, and she never got a response from her. But so there, as Ben Shapiro mentioned like a few weeks ago, and I keep mentioning, Republicans it doesn't seem like a lot of them know how to really convey their values to their children, and it's probably because a lot of them don't believe what they actually stand for. So I think people need to take a long look in the mirror, to understand what they actually stand for, how to convey it, and to move forward. And you're going to have to tell your neighbors and your friends and actually convert more people to your side of thinking, or you'll just never have power. You can't just hope that there's a snowstorm or a rainy day on election day, so maybe Republicans can win. At least that's how it's been in Michigan. You gotta try to have a huge cultural shift if you want to take power. So there's just a lot of moving pieces. It's hard to even blame a person, but there's definitely people who can be blamed. Anyway, God bless you guys. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. Check out different merch, like I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For, or like that shirt made after Gina Carano whole drama. So that's on the website along with other stuff. And if you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com. God bless. See you.